So, to be honest, I'm not quite sure how I should start this. And I'm guessing most of you probably just want to see the poker and see some big pots and some ridiculous punts. And don't worry, we'll get to that. But first, here's just a little bit of backstory. So, basically, it all kind of starts growing up in Alaska. I was just a little kid when I had my first memory of working out on the fishing boat, and I don't know, it seemed like a mix between fun and some hard work. And before I knew it, I was a teenager and I was working full-time as a deckhand, and that was, I don't know, about maybe 25 years ago, and been pretty much doing it almost every year ever since. It's definitely a challenging job, especially with the long hours and unpredictable conditions, yet the scenery is pretty spectacular. Nevertheless, after 2 very long months out on the water, I'm really looking forward to finally taking the long boat ride back to home port, where I can get some time off and play some cards. This is basically where I first started playing poker, was in Alaska with a bunch of fishermen and local gamblers in the small town that we fished out of. And I pretty much just started playing just a few years ago. I never really had much of a family background of gambling. My dad was a fisherman, which I guess you could say fishing is kind of like gambling in a way. You don't have very predictable results. Sometimes you could strike out, sometimes you could hit big, but there's nothing really guaranteed, and there's always a little bit of that unpredictability that keeps you coming back. So I got invited to my first poker game in Cordova. It was just the back room of a bar, and some locals playing Texas Hold'em. And when I first started playing it, I had no idea what I was doing. But hey, you got to start somewhere. So I bought in and tried my best to figure out what was going on, and looked a little something like this. So in this first hand I'm going to show you, we're playing Texas No Limit Hold'em, $1, $2, and I'm in the small blind here with ace-7 of clubs, and we got a few limpers, and it gets around to me, and I raise it up to $20. Of course, everyone gives me a little bit of grief about that because, they're all cheap. And we get a caller from the big blind and middle position and in late position, and go 4 ways off to a flop. So we get a flop of queen deuce 6 and 4 ways out of position. I'm just going to do a lot of checking here. So the big blind bets out very small, only $15 into a pot of over $80. So with such a small sizing, I'm just going to float here. And we get a turn of the 7 of spades. So at least I make a pair. I check again, and the big blind bets out even smaller this time, $10. which is ridiculously small. Now, on the river, the king of spades comes in, which brings in an overcard and brings in the flush, and I'm thinking I can easily steal the pot at this point. So I try to think of an amount that will represent a hand that the big blind will fold to, and I go with $80. She hems and haws for a little bit and, says, do you have a king? Do you have a flush? And I just stay silent, and I know she's gonna fold. She's just giving a card funeral to what is probably a very weak hand. And eventually she lets it go, and I win the pot. And I don't have any footage of me scooping the pot because I don't know how to film poker vlogs yet, and I cut the camera too early. So before I knew it, I started getting invited to various other games around town, and these games played a little bit bigger, and they also played some other mixed games. One of the most popular ones being what they called Cincinnati, or as the rest of the world knows it, Big O, which is basically 5-card pot limit Omaha high-low. I'll put a little link here if you want to learn how to play it. The first thing I realized about Big O is that the action was a lot bigger than in the Hold'em games, and it was a little bit of a learning curve figuring the game out, but once I understood it, I loved it. So now we don't have to see any more Hold'em hands, because Hold'em is boring and there's a million other Hold'em poker vlogs out there. So here's a look at a collection of some Big O poker hands I played during my time in Alaska this past fall. So in this first hand, I raised pre-flop to $20 with the ace queen jack 7-4 with a suited ace, and we go 5 ways to the flop. And I'd say the flop was pretty good. I flopped the nuts.
What I would probably, what I would do and expect is to be fair, the last $0 This was the first time. $0.
So surprisingly, middle position bets $50, and I elect just a smooth call here. I want to try to let this player keep betting.
I'm a good card.
So the turn comes the 5 of diamonds, and that brings in the low. So I now have the second nut low along with the nut flush. And this time the middle position elects to check. So I bet out $100, and he doesn't think too long before calling.
Call.
The river is the 8, so pretty much nothing changes. I still have second nut low, I still have the nut flush. And he checks to me again, and I think with his stack size, the only option here is to shove for the rest of his chips and hope he has something he can call me with. He thinks for a few minutes, and I think with his stack size and with the size of the pot, I mean, what's he gonna do now? Fold? So he puts in the call, and I couldn't quite tell if he put his chips in or not, so I confirmed that he called, and then quickly tabled my hand and show him that I have the nut flush with the second nut low, and he has a 9 high flush with a 6-3 low. So I end up scooping this one.
So this is the bet, right?
Yep.
He got it all.
Oh, hold on. I don't think he
Yeah, he did.
Oh, it's
No,
250.
I don't have 250.
God damn it, Matt. On the flop, when he bet that $50 in my head, I was like, Matt, just don't take all of his chips from me.
It was an accident.
No, it wasn't.
So this next hand, I'm not particularly proud of how I played it, but it illustrates one of my leaks, so let's take a look. So I'm in the small blind with ace 6 5 4 deuce, and the undergun raises to 15, and we get a bunch of callers, and we go 6 ways to a flop of king 5 jack. And it checks around to the button, who bets $40 into $90, and really I should be done with a hand here, and there's not really much of a reason for me to call, but for some reason I'm hoping to probably hit some sort of backdoor low, so I make the call, and we get a few other callers, and go 4 ways to the turn with about $250 in the pot. Now the turn is the 8, which I guess if I am calling the flop with hopes of hitting a backdoor low, the 8 is probably a card I'd want to see. So it checks again to the button, who bets $100, and I didn't come this far to try to hit a backdoor low to fold now, so I call the turn, bet of 100, and the under the gun calls, and now we're 3 ways to the river with $550 in the pot. The river is a 5, so that pairs the 5, and it checks the button, who bets $175, and I mean at this point, yeah, I do make trip 5s, but it's would not be very wise for me to call here, and I end up having to fold, and I probably could have avoided losing this $155 if I had just folded on the flop. And you can see here the button flopped a set of kings and ended up making kings full on the river, but hopefully I learned my lesson here. We'll find out. Okay, so in this next hand, I straddle on the button for $10. In pre-flop, it folds around to the hijack, who limps the $10, and the cutoff limps, and then it skips me in the straddle, and the big blind completes, and now the action is finally on me, and I raise it up to $50 with ace, ace, queen, 10, 9. So with a hand like this, it's impossible for me to make any sort of low. So I'm hoping just to be able to make some sort of high hand with this. And the big blind folds, and the hijack and cutoff both call. So the flop is deuce 8 jack, and I flop a pretty good wrap here. And the hijack donks for $50. The cutoff folds, and I call with my straight draw. And we go heads up to the turn, and the pot is now $260. So the turn is the 7 of diamonds, which gives me the straight I was looking for. Nonetheless, the cutoff bet's $50, and I think for a minute here about what I want to do, and I think against this particular opponent, I don't want to raise because I think that he will have a tendency to barrel again on the river if I just flat call. So I just make a call, and we go to the river, and the river is a queen of clubs, so that pretty much changes nothing. And the cutoff bet's $125. Now, with the deuce and the 8 and the 7 out there, I want to try to make a bet that will force him to fold any bad lows that he might have, since I don't have any low at all and I only have the high. So I decide that I'm going to shove for $440. Also, holding 2 aces in my hands, it's slightly less likely that he'll have ace 3 for the nut low. So I'm thinking if I shove here, he'll fold any of his marginal lows that he might have in his hand. And he thinks for a minute, and he makes the fold. So we win a nice little pot here.
It showed us 2 horse card.
So moving on to this hand, I want to illustrate a few of the complex decisions that come with Big O, as well as some decisions that also come with stack size. So I'm under the gun with ace 8 7 4 deuce, and with the $20 straddle on from the button, I elect for just a min raise here to $40 for my open. And we get a couple of folds, and then most of the table ends up calling. And the button, you can see he completes for $40, but he's not super excited about it. So we go 6 ways to a flop with $240 in the pot. So we get a flop of 6-3 queen, and it checks around to me, and I down bet to $80, and the under the gun 1 folds, the cutoff folds, the button calls, and then now the small blind check raise jams to $330 total. And with my low draw here, I end up just calling the extra $253, and the button also calls the $253. So the turn is the 7 of hearts. So I make my low. I make the nut low here. I don't really have much of a high hand to speak of. So I check to see what the button does, and the button puts me all in for my last $525. So I make the call with the nut low. So we have a side pot of a little over $1,000, and the main pot is $1,200. The total pot's a little over $2,000. And the river is a 7 of clubs. So the board pairs, and I still have the nut low. And everyone's all in, so there's no action on the river. And I show my hand, and the button shows 9-8-5-4 deuce for the turn straight. So I end up chopping the side pot because I have the nut low and he has the straight. And the small blind has queens full, so he flopped the set and then rivered the full house. So I end up chopping the main pot with the small blind. So my main point here is, if I had been playing as deep as I should have in this game, then I easily could have made a pot-sized bet on the river when the board pairs, and quite possibly bet the button off of his straight using my nut low, and potentially win a sizable side pot off of the button if I had been playing deeper. So that's just a reminder that if you're playing if you're playing a Big O game, it gives you very little advantage to be playing this game short stacked. I want to be playing at least 100 big blinds in these games, and when we're seeing straddles for $20, that means having $2,000 in my stack. Or alternatively, I don't bet on the flop, and I keep the stack to pot ratio sizes a little bit bigger, and that way when I get to the river, there's a possibility I can still have money behind that I could use to bet the button off of his half of the pot. Okay, so at this point in the night, it's past 2:30 in the morning, and we're gonna start seeing some mistakes, and there's a good chance I was tired or tilted or desperate to win some kind of money getting this late into the night, and we see how a simple mistake can compound to cause much bigger problems. So there is a straddle on this hand to $20. The under the gun folds, low jack limps, and I'm in the hijack with ace 10 4 3 2, and I raise to $55. The action skips the cutoff in the straddle, the button folds, the small blind folds, the big blind calls, the cutoff calls, and the low jack calls the raise. So we go 4 ways to the flop with about a little over $200 in the pot. So the flop is jack ace king. So it checks around to the cutoff, who bets $85, and both the big blind and low jack calls. And somehow I convinced myself that I'm priced in to try to call for a backdoor low, even though this board is very wet yet static. So we go 4 ways to the turn, and the turn is a 7 of diamonds. So here's a low card, and it gives me the low wrap. So we all check to the cutoff, who bets $325, and the big blind folds and low jack calls, and I decide and make the call because I didn't come this far to fold. So the pot's now $1,500, and the river's a 9 of hearts. So we brick our low, and of course I check, and the cutoff bet's $500, and I'm forced to fold. And I end up losing about $465 on this hand, trying to hit a backdoor low, when really I probably should just folded the flop. And this is just a repeat of that mistake I had seen earlier, showing that, you know, when I get these premium low hands, I am still dealing with being attached to them, even when I'm getting flops that don't correlate very well with these premium low hands that I'm dealt. So need to learn to not be attached to these hands and just let them go. Okay, so this next hand of Big O is kind of a unique hand, and I'd actually be really curious to hear some of your thoughts in the comments on this particular hand. Okay, so we're down to 6-handed right now, and there's a button straddle to $25. Now, normally with a hand like ace deuce 3 7 8, I would raise pre-flop, but because the straddle is 5 times the size of the big blind and we're somewhat short-handed, I actually make the decision to just flat the straddle of $25 because I'm wanting to try to invite other players into the pot with a hand like this. I'm not trying to push players out. And surprisingly, the entire table ends up calling. So we go 6 ways to the flop, and there's $150 in the pot. So the flop is 3-4 queen, and the small blind and big blind both check in the dark, which is, I don't recommend doing this. Don't check in the dark. And I down bet to $35 with my low draw, and I guess technically I have a club draw, but it's only 7 high, but we'll count it. The hijack folds, and now the cutoff pots it to $255. So I'm pretty sure at this point he has a set of queens. It folds around to me, and I call, and we go heads up, and the pot is $660. So the turn brings in the 5 of hearts, which gives me both the nut low and a wheel. And I'm faced with a decision here. Do I check and hope that this opponent keeps betting? Or do I lead out and charge him to possibly boat up? Now against this particular opponent, I think that there's a really good chance that if I check to him, he's just going to check back and try to get a free river card. So I can't let him do that. So I end up electing for a bet of $250, which is less than half a pot size bet, which now that I already have half the pot locked up, he basically has to call this extra $250 to hope to try to get half the pot. And the river is a king of hearts, so comes out clean, and I bet even smaller this time, $200, and this player is just done with the hand. He ends up folding, and I win a nice little pot. Okay, so we have one last hand of Big O here for you. And in this hand, I'm in the cutoff with Ace, King, 8, 7, Deuce. The under the gun limps, the hijack limps, and I raised to $20. And the button calls, and the small blind calls, and the big blind folds, the under the gun calls, and the hijack calls. And we go 5 ways to the flop with $100 in the pot. Now the flop is Jack of Hearts, 6 of Diamonds, 9 of Clubs, and it checks to me, and I bet $25 and get raised to $100. Now I end up making the call here with my open-ended straight draw, and we go to the turn with $300 in the pot. Now the turn is the King of Clubs, so now I have backdoor clubs as well as my open-ender. So I check the button, who bets $200, and I make the call. So the river is the 3 of Clubs, and I actually had no idea that the button only had $13 left in his stack, but it doesn't matter. I check, he goes all in for his last $13, and I call and scoop. Alright, so that's pretty much been my fall up here. A bunch of poker sessions in Cordova, Alaska. Different games, but most of the same faces. Some nights where everything just clicked. Other nights where things just felt like a fog. And definitely a few hands that I'll probably be thinking about for way too long. But anyways, pulling back a bit, it's November now. The snow is starting to dust the mountains. The salmon have found their way back to their streams. The sun's low even in the middle of the day, and the temperature keeps dropping. You can feel the town thinning out, especially at the poker table, because a lot of fishermen are already migrating south for the winter. And now it's my turn. It's a little bit bittersweet. This place is beautiful. I'm gonna miss the harbor, the cold air, the routine, the people, everything. But I'm also excited. I'm heading to the lower 48 to play poker in new rooms, meet new people, see places I haven't been, and see what happens when I'm out of my element. And hopefully it will help me figure out some questions I've been carrying with me. Like, how long do I want to keep fishing? Can I actually make money playing poker? Is this a skill that I'm building? Or am I just trying to make degeneracy sustainable? Am I chasing freedom or avoiding something? What do I do with losing when it gets into your head? And what am I really trying to prove when I sit down at the table? So, yeah, Alaska's winding down, the town's getting quieter, and I'm packing up. So, next episode, new chapter, new tables, and new faces. And we'll see what shows up when I'm dealt something different.
Wine comes the Cordova gray, boots by the door from yesterday. Copper tide still on my hand, salt don't leave on command. Net line humming slow and low, canneries breathing in the glow. Played my cards in a backroom game, same old tide, same old name. I'm a nut lowlife, that's my way. Half on the river, half on the bay. From the boats to the backroom lights, I've been living split pot nights. Ace and deuce and northern sky, stack of chips and the gulls fly by. If the high hand takes the pot, I ride the low with what I've got. Smoked salmon and toffee steam, ace deuce tucked like a quiet dream. Eyak Lake in the morning shine, breathe that water like a table sign. Sheridan Glacier shining white, Power Creek running through the night. I don't bluff that northern wind, just play the hand I'm sitting in. I'm a nut lowlife, that's my way. Half on the river, half on the bay. From the nets to the poker room, living slow beneath the moon. Ace and deuce and northern sky, stack of chips and the years roll by. If the big pots pass me through, I'll take a low and start anew. Pack my bag by the harbor light, last cold breeze of a Cordova night. Fishing years in the rear view now, time to leave, I don't know how, but the cards still call my name. Different towns, a different game. From Alaska's edge so wide, I'll follow the low wherever it rides. I'm a nut lowlife, that's my road. Half with the kite, half with the cold. From the docks to the highway line, living one hand at a time. Ace and deuce and open sky, let the high hands wander by. If the river runs me dry, I'll ride the low and stay alive. Laid in one hand